Okay, and then I'm going to share the screen. Let me just skip. Let me just share everything and then. Okay, so we've been working our way through the perceptions, what are called in Pali the sanya. Again, we have this word sanya, which Mm. which normally means perception, but in this case, it takes on the meaning of the themes for meditation. And these are themes that involve some degree of reflective thought, of some degree of reflection, contemplation, examination, investigation. So these are not purely quieting meditations in which your aim is to just focus the mind upon a single simple object. But this is a meditation where you use the power of thinking and reflection to examine certain things in order to develop a perception on the basis of that reflective thought. And so we've already gone through the unattractive nature of the body. And I can do during the week, I can do another recording of this and then post it on YouTube. And last week we did the meditation on death. And today I'm going to combine two reflections into one because it seems that they really can be combined, that they're in a way just different expressions for what can be taken as the same thing. And I have to say, as a word of warning, in Buddhist meditation, we have like two broad categories of practices. One is analogous to having a friend come along and pat you on the back when you're feeling down and saying, cheer up, my good friend, things are not so bad. Look at the bright side of things. It's not all darkness and gloom, but you could see the sunrise in the morning, and at night you could look at the stars sparkling in the sky. So that's one kind of meditation. The other kind of meditation is like the friend when you're being foolish and silly comes along and slaps you in the face or gives you a punch in the belly and says, or hits you hard on the back and says, "Get real, man. You're daydreaming. You're being silly." And so these meditations that we're going to be doing today belong to that second category. So these are the meditations that are designed to sort of help us break out of our diluted intoxication. So danger and non-delight in the whole world. And so let's see how they're explained in the Girimananda Sutta. Yeah, I'm going to have to go do a little explanation as background to these meditations. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes,
The
Bhante.
text of the Girimananda Sutta. Okay, so here the Buddha says, what is the perception of danger, having gone to the forest and so on? The monk reflects thus, this body is the source of much pain and danger, for all sorts of afflictions arise in the body. That is eye disease, and he goes through a whole list of diseases, ending with um, hunger, thirst, excretion, and urination. So those are the dangers in the body. But as we'll see, I think the concept of danger can be broadened beyond just a list of illnesses bound up with bodily existence. Okay, the next one, the other one we'll be doing is the perception of non-delight in the entire world, which is explained rather vaguely in the sutta. The monk refrains from any engagement in clinging, mental standpoints, adherences, and underlying tendencies in regard to the world, abandoning them without clinging to them. So that is called the perception of non-delight in the entire world. So I'm going to sort of merge these two together by by giving a broader perspective on the concept of what's translated as danger. And the Pali word here is adinava. So let me go to my other file. Okay. Okay, so here I had the definition from the Girimalanda Sutta. Yeah, so the key word, let's put the key word in. Adinava, which here I'm translating as danger, but it has a number of nuances. I think Venerable Tanisaro uses the word drawback, which is good in some contexts. We could say pitfalls. Some use disadvantage, so that's a bit weak. Okay, so I've brought together a number of suttas which speak about different kinds of adinava. So there's a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya number 13 in which the text speaks about the adinava in sensual pleasures, bodily form, and feeling. So the danger in the case of sensual pleasures, one danger is that we have a young man who, to make a living, he has to face cold and heat, make contact with gadflies, mosquitoes, and even to risk death by hunger and thirst. Another danger in sensual pleasures with a broader social significance is that because of sensual pleasures, the desire for sensual pleasures, kings, or we could say country fights with country, householders fight with householders, the mother fights with the son with the mother, father fights with the son with the father, brother with brother, sister with sister, and so on, even to the point where they attack each other with sticks and knives, even to the point of death. And then because of sensual pleasures, so that's another danger in sensual pleasures. Men take up weapons and fight and wars, and they get their heads cut off and meet with death and deathly suffering. And then so that's another danger in sensual pleasures visible in this present life. But then because of sensual pleasures, people um, engage in misconduct of body, speech, and mind. As a result, they acquire unwholesome karma, and as a result of that karma, they're reborn in states of misery. So that's a danger in sensual pleasures encountered in the life to come. Okay, then we find this concept of danger as a motivation for the Bodhisattva, the future Buddha, to have given up the worldly life and to have gone forth into the homeless life. So he says, while I was still, before my enlightenment, while I was still a Bodhisattva, I was subject to birth, old age, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. And I also sought things that were subject to birth, old age, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. Then, having understood the danger in what is subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, I decided to seek the ageless, the illness-free, deathless, sorrowless, and undefiled supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Okay, then we have suttas on the danger, the adinava, and the five aggregates. So what is the gratification in the five aggregates? It's the pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on bodily form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. So that's the gratification or the enjoyment. And what is the danger or the drawback? That bodily form, feeling that all the five aggregates are impermanent, bound up with suffering, and subject to change. That is the danger in them. Okay, so that gives us some idea of what is meant by adinava. And the way I'm going to sort of develop this meditation is to pull out this passage about the Bodhisattva's quest and take adinava to lie in birth, old age, sickness, and death, and then more broadly in the suffering of samsara. And for that, I had another little sutta or group of suttas. So this is from the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 15, the chapter on the beginningless samsara, where the text says, let's say a few example suttas, that this samsara is without any discoverable beginning. Samsara, of course, it's the round of repeated birth and death. A first point is not found of living beings roaming and wandering, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Then the Buddha says, what do you think? What is more? The stream of tears that you have shed as you've roamed and wandered through this long course of samsara, this or the water in the four great oceans? And of course, the monks say, as we understand the Dhamma, the stream of tears that we've shed as we've wandered through the samsara, that is greater than the water in the four great oceans. And then what do you think is more, the mother's milk that you have drunk as you've wandered in samsara, this or the water in the four great oceans? And of course, the mother's milk that we've drunk, if you take it all together, is more than the water in the four great oceans. Then the mass of bones that we have left behind as we've roamed and wandered in the samsara, this is greater than Mount Vapula, a large mountain outside the city of Rajagaha. And what is more, the blood that you've shed as you've wandered on from life to life, this or the water in the great oceans. And the Buddha then says, in this beginningless samsara, the blood that we've shed is greater than the water in the four great oceans. Okay, so this gives us some basis for understanding the nature of the meaning of adinava. And so now we'll do this as a kind of reflective meditation, and I'll leave a lot up to you. So take a comfortable sitting position. You don't have to be as firm and solid as you would do if you're doing mindfulness of breathing. It could be a bit relaxed, but firm enough, steady enough so you could direct the mind to the, these reflective contemplations. Okay, so first let the mind just settle down. You do a few rounds of mindful breathing just to settle the mind. So now we're going to be developing or practicing the Adinavasanya, the meditation on danger, the perception of danger. And it's the perception of danger is what arouses the mind of renunciation. For it's when we see into the danger that lies just beneath the pleasure and enjoyment of worldly life that the mind turns away from indulgence and pursuit of worldly pleasures and sets out in quest of liberation, that the mind turns to renunciation and following the example of the Buddha himself, sets out to seek that supreme security from bondage, the deathless nibbana. And so we're going to examine the unsatisfactory nature of samsaric existence. And so in the sequence begins with birth. And so we can conceive of us in the state before we've come into the present life, in the kind of intermediate zone where we might be dwelling quite peacefully, and then our karma is ready to pull us in, ready for us to bring us back into this existence. And then our stream of consciousness is sucked in into the mother's womb. And then we spend 9 months developing in the womb through the various stages of fetal development until the event of birth takes place and we're propelled out of the womb into independent existence. A helpless infant, entirely dependent upon others. So this is birth. And to really get a strong sense of disenchantment, you could go, though it's not mentioned in the text, but you could go through in your reflections the entire process of development, maybe even starting in kindergarten, elementary school, junior high, high school, maybe your first romantic infatuation, and maybe from high school to college, and starting your career, the struggle to find a job, maybe then the love that leads to marriage, bringing up, bearing children, having children of your own, supporting children. Then we come to, as we reach the peak, we come to old age. We're proud of our beautiful hair, but the hair turns gray, starts to fall out. The skin, the smooth, beautiful skin becomes wrinkled. The teeth break or fall out. The faculties, sense faculties start to decline. Vision gets weaker. Hearing gets weaker. We no longer enjoy our food as much. The memory gets dim. Other people look at us, even the kids in the street look at us. And when they see an old person, sometimes they get frightened and run away. Our younger relatives maybe don't even show us much hospitality anymore. And we don't even understand what they're talking about. So old age. Then we come to illness, and we could just take a few of the illnesses mentioned in the sutta. We have eye disease, maybe glaucoma, cataracts, headaches, earaches, stomach ache, in some cases, tuberculosis, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, shingles, supposed to be very painful, various kinds of cancer, tumor of the brain, cancer of, in case of women, breast cancer, in the case of men, prostate cancer, cancer of the liver, intestinal cancer, illness. So this is just some examples of illness. And then death. Last week we did the meditation on death, but here we just take the event of death as the separation from the body, an event when consciousness severs its connection to this physical body. Death. Could be a natural death, death from a severe illness, death in an automobile accident, death from gun violence, so many causes of death. And then we go through the cycle again from death into the intermediate stage, then back to new birth, growth, all of the pains of growth and development, aging, old age, the multitude of illnesses, and death again. And so you reflect on the repeated cycle of birth, growth, old age, illness, and death. And then remember the words of the sutta. The stream of tears, as we've gone through the cycle over and over again, we experience the death and separation from our parents when they pass away, the sorrow of losing one's spouse, one's husband or wife, the sorrow of losing one's own children, the grief, even the despair. And as we're parted and separated from all of our loved ones, we shed tears. And when we collect all of these tears, they're greater than the waters in the ocean. And then we can reflect on how, as we've passed through the cycle of repeated birth and death over and over, again and again, each time we leave behind this physical body, and as the body decays, what remains are just the bones. And if we collect all of these bones and put them into a heap, a pile, the pile would be higher than maybe what's a familiar mountain?
Himalayas.
Okay, but okay, we could say the Himalayas.
Everest, Monte Everest.
Okay, Mount Everest. I was thinking of one in North America. What is the one in Washington? Olympia, is it in Washington State? Or
Mount
McKinley, Mount McKinley.
Mount Rainier.
Yeah, Mount Rainier, that's the one. Okay, and then you just use your own imagination. As I mentioned, birth, which comprises both the period, the descent into the womb, as well as the whole process of fetal development, and then the expulsion from the womb. And then there's growth with all of the anxieties bound up with childhood, the torments of adolescence, the high expectations and disappointments of adult years, and then old age. Think of real old age, late 80s, 90s. And illness, you could think of the varieties of illness. And then death. Think of the various circumstances under which each of us might die. And then you reflect on how this has been going on through time without beginning. World cycle after world cycle in the past, and potentially world cycle after world cycle in the future. And when we think of birth into the human realm, think what it might be like if you're reborn, say, into maybe Afghanistan as a female. I don't want to politicize this, but just think no opportunity to go to school. You're forced to be completely subservient to the males in the family. We're reborn into a country afflicted with famine, acute food shortages, even famine, like Somalia or Yemen, and have to grow up facing it every day, a constant struggle just to get enough food to subsist from day to day. Or you're born as a male into a country which is planning to launch a war, and then you're compelled to go into military service and to fight to the death, even though you have no belief in the cause for which you're fighting. Or you're born into a country which is located on a fault line prone to earthquakes. Or a country which is vulnerable to the worst ravages of the changing climate. So your home, your livelihood could be just wiped out just in a matter of hours or minutes. Okay, so we reflect on danger, we highlight the reality of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So these highlight or underscore the danger in worldly existence, and they generate a sense of discontent with the entire world. And then I think it's good to conclude this meditation by directing the mind to the opposite to gain some consolation. So we direct the mind to the unborn, to the state beyond old age and decay, to the state beyond illness, to the deathless state, the unborn, undecaying, unafflicted, deathless state, the supreme release from bondage, nibbana. Okay, now you could bring the mind back to the breath, do a few cycles of mindful breathing in and out. in and out. And then you can open your eyes. And maybe we could take a few questions if you have some questions about this contemplation, this practice, mode of practice.
One thing, I have a burning question actually.
Yeah, I should also add that this kind of meditation should be done in very small doses, like usually like about 10 or 15 minutes at a time. Otherwise, it's a bit, could be a bit overwhelming. Yeah, so the way to pose your question is to use the hand symbol. Somebody was speaking and saying, I have a question. Who was that?
That is me. I'm Samangi. Thank you.
Okay, please.
So as you were guiding the meditation, the unattractiveness and all of those, we experience them firsthand in life.
Yeah.
It is easier, not easy, but easier to understand what it is, the negativity of the negative aspects of things, the negativity. But when you say, even at that point, before you said about the other side, unborn, that is an abstraction, because I, for one, do not understand Nibbana or experience. How do we balance this? Because you are looking at something that you're experiencing and in a negative way, but the other side is an abstraction.
Okay, that's a good question. And the way you do this, you're not trying to understand now Nibbana conceptually, but you're just trying to get what I would call to get the flavor of those expressions to permeate the mind and sort of to give some upliftment to balance out maybe the moods, the dark moods, the mood of maybe even anxiety or dejection that could come out when you're contemplating birth, old age, sickness, and death, to see that there is some release from that state.
How do you know about that release? The negative aspects is not bothering me so much as what is on the other side is not experienced.
Yeah, you don't have to worry that you don't have experience of it. You just let the flavor of those expressions, as I said, sort of pervade the mind and uplift the mind.
So
But I'm going to be dealing with this more. We still have, it's called the perception of dispassion. And it will be the one we'll be taking not next week. Next week we do impermanence and non-self. The week after that we do the perception of dispassion. Then we'll be doing the qualities of Nibbana, some of the aspects of Nibbana.
So at the moment, it is kind of like a belief.
Yeah, it's something that we take on faith.
Okay.
But we use it sort of just to, as I say, to uplift the mind or to make the mind tranquil.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Gita.
Thank you, Bhante, for all the teachings. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Bhante, I have a question. I have a question.
Yeah, I have to ask people to express the question very simply, clearly, and briefly.
Bhante, in the Velama Sutta, Buddha talks about the highest form of meritorious action, or actually even that would be beneficial for all of us, is to meditate on anicca, like impermanence, right? Even for a few seconds, meditate on it. What is the best way to incorporate this into our daily practice? Because he says it's even more meritorious than karuna, metta, mudita, which is the four Brahma Viharas.
As I said, next week we'll be doing with the.
You're going to do that? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so then we have Keith.
Yeah. So let's suppose that you do these meditations and you attain dispassion.
Yeah.
how do you continue to live a lay life effectively? How do you continue to do your job?
Maybe that's why the Buddha says monks. There are these. Yeah, but what I found,
Very good.
I mentioned this a few weeks ago when I was living in Kandy, the town in Sri Lanka. There was a large monastery on the outskirts of the forest where I was living. It was the Dalita Tapovana. And every, like the full moon day, they would have meditation for the general public. And the meditation that they taught was the meditation on the 32 parts of the body, which is another meditation that leads to dispassion. And flocks of people would come to learn that meditation. And yet they would go back and they would go about their everyday life. So it's not, if you do that meditation, it will lead to dispassion and to renunciation, but you can still go about your daily life. But it's a reminder that when you tend to like get swept away by worldly enjoyment, then you come back to that meditation as an antidote. Okay, my time is running out for questions, so I'll have to try to treat them briefly. So Rena,
Yeah. Um, Very often when I sit for meditation, um, within like 10 minutes or so, I start feeling more comfortable and
yeah,
start thinking about things, and then thinking about fun thing, interesting thing, and some feel like I just get up and do things. So should I force myself to keep sitting, or what should I do? Like if I'm trying doing this week after week, whenever I'm trying to meditate, this is a very common tendency.
okay, what you do is try to extend the sitting session maybe by 5 minutes at a time till you feel at each interval till you feel comfortable with that longer session. So you go from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. When you're comfortable with that, you go up to 20 minutes. Then you might try going from 20 to 30 minutes. And then for on a daily basis, if you can manage 30 minutes, 40 minutes at a sitting, that's quite fine. You don't
But
have to
even after that, even the 30 minutes, will there be some amount of forcing myself to continue sitting? And
say
or if I
again.
feel like I just want to get up, should I just get up, or should I still force myself a little bit?
I would say force yourself a bit initially
Okay,
till,
thank you.
yeah, it takes a little bit of force, but don't overly force yourself. If you're really feeling agony, don't push yourself beyond, don't continue to push yourself. But you still have to get used to longer sitting periods, you do have to push yourself a bit
Okay,
to
thank you.
overcome the initial resistance.
Thank you.
But do it sort of gently but firmly. Okay, well, I have to take one last question. This is En Choi.
Yes, Bante. When I was contemplating on the other side, I find my mind cling to it. I said, I really want to have that kind of state.
Yeah,
I don't want to go through the birth, aging,
yeah.
death again. So isn't that lust? Or is it that clinging? So how do I deal with
It's a
that?
kind of clinging, but I think it's a good kind of clinging. But still, it's useful to go back and to examine birth, old age, sickness, and death, because that motivates or that instills, brings into the mind the renunciation and dispassion that moves one towards the deathless. Okay, we're going to have to end the session now, so I will just quickly do a sharing of the merits. Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Sasanang Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desanang Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mang Parang. dukkha pata chani dukkha, bhaya pata chani bhaya, soka pata chani soka, antu sabepi panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. Okay, now we can stop.
Sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante Bodhi. Have a good lunch.
Okay.
Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you,
Bhante, thank you for your
Bhante.
teaching.
See you on Wednesday.
Bhante.
Thank you. Be
Bye.
safe, be healthy.
Thank you,
Oh,
Bhante.
Bhante, have a
Okay,
good
thank
So
lunch.
you.
much.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, I'll have to end now.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, bye.